G'day, I'm Sam and this is the 2026 Yamaha YZ450F. Now we're going to be riding this bike in a few months time, sometime in September at the national launch, but in the meantime Yamaha Australia has let me have a little peek behind the curtain, if you will. We've been invited to their national headquarters here in Western Sydney in Australia to see the YZ450 up close and personal for the first time. Now you might remember a couple of years ago, I think it was 2023, Yamaha launched the previous generation YZ450. I was lucky enough to attend that launch, and what was clear from the outset is that it really moved the needle in terms of engine performance, really punchy character, and I guess aggressive ergonomics as well. It set that bike apart, possibly divided riders as well, because it became known as, I guess, the angrier 450 option on the market. Well, this 2026 model is really aimed at broadening Yamaha's buying portfolio. It's still the same feisty machine, but Yamaha have tried to soften it, make it a little bit more metered, and I guess a little bit more rideable for anyone who's not Eli Tomac or Cooper Webb. The thinking is that this bike is just as fast in a straight line as before, but importantly, it's faster over the length of an entire moto. So we're going to take a quick walk around today. Let's get to it. So I guess the all-important one here is the price. It's always going to be a decisive factor for any new bike. This one, $15,749 right away. That's the Australian price. It's pretty much line ball with before. I think Yamaha underwent, I guess, a bit of an uptick in price about 5 years ago, but they've stayed pretty consistent with these latest generation of bikes. So that's very similar to before. You can spend more money if you want to though. There is a YZ450F SP, which is a special anniversary model celebrating 70 years of Yamaha production. It comes in a red and white livery. It looks really cool. They've actually got one here as well. That won't be arriving in showrooms until around November. The standard bike sometime in August or September. So other than the livery though, it's identical, the same bike as what you get with this blue version. So pricing out of the way, I guess taking a step back, it does, compare pretty favorably to new entrants in the market like the Triumph TF450. That's closer to $17,000. Even the upcoming Ducati 450 is going to be closer to $17,000 before. So the Japs are still quite well represented when it comes to price. I guess taking in all of the changes here, if you do take a step back and look at it, it is definitely aimed at making this bike more rideable than before. So we'll start with the frame, since that is a major talking point with these changes. So basically Yamaha has narrowed the down tube of the frame, they've narrowed the perimeter of the frame as well, in changes that are said to make this more planted in its feeling. So nothing wrong with the way that this bike turned in before. It was quite aggressive, but they want to make it more planted. To me, that sort of says that maybe potentially in a step of something like the KX450F. The changes that were made to that bike a couple of years ago, really well received, because for all kinds of riders, it just inspired confidence with how planted it felt, particularly in the front end. This thing has absolutely no trouble throttle steering, we know that, so I'm assuming that this will take that forward as well. Lots of clever Japanese marketing speak around some of the new technologies, but for me I think it does sort of say that they want to make it a little bit more rider friendly than before. Same industry standard KYB suspension. The stuff that Yamaha runs is among the best, arguably the best you're going to get on any new production bike. So spring loaded fork up front, KYB, like the Triple S shocks. I've got the same forks in my YZ250 two-stroke. It's 6 years old and I still absolutely love it. So very similar to the suspension you get in that package. KYB shock as well. There's been some small damping characteristics that have been updated, particularly with the shock. And again, it's about removing some of the initial harshness over bumps. So again, to me, that says that Yamaha wants to make this bike, I guess, broaden its envelope, make it a little bit more amenable to entry-level riders. So definitely a good change there. Another promising thing is that there's now a hand adjustment on the rear compression. So some bikes, with this bike, you could, in 2023, they came out with hand compression adjustment on the fork. Well, now you can get it on the shock as well. Just removes a little bit more requirement for tools and things like that when you're at a track. You can just change it on the go, do half a lap of the track. If you don't like it, change it back, make more improvements, whatever. But definitely makes this bike, I guess, you know, easier to use, easier to adjust out on the go. Now we come to the engine. So there's been a lot of changes around the intake port and the intake system. They call it the tumble effect of the engine. Again, it's about making the power more metered in its delivery, more linear, more approachable as well. So I'm really curious to see if they've succeeded in that, but by all reports, some big changes there. And I still think this engine can be hard hitting while being a little bit more metered off the bottom. The other thing that Yamaha says they've improved is the characteristic between throttle input and rear wheel output. When this bike first came out in 2023, the previous generation, it had a very direct correlation between your throttle and the back wheel. If you gave it too much throttle, the thing would wheel stand quite happily. So again, I think they've metered that a little bit more, and I'm really interested to see how it all works out. With all of that said, the biggest change here is undoubtedly the adoption of a hydraulic clutch. Aside from Suzuki, basically every other manufacturer has already done it. Yamaha's really taken its time, and I wanted to chat to officials about that. What's been such a delay with, I guess, keeping up with your peers? They insist that it's the development of the hydraulic clutch. They wanted to make sure it would offer consistent feeling and modulation over the length of a moto, even in the hands of the most aggressive rider. But they also wanted to make sure it stood up to the punishment that a motocross bike receives over its lifetime. And they're very, very confident that they have done that. So that's why it's here for 2026. I guess in line with all the other changes with this bike, it's also said to be a little bit lighter to pull in, which it does feel statically, but also, yeah, I guess a little bit less fatigue over the length of a moto. Now, in terms of graphics and everything else, as always, you can't bring out a new bike without bold new graphics, but this does have a few changes. These side plates are now a two-piece function. You've got this new honeycomb style seat, which is said to be a little bit grippier than before, but very similar open cockpit as well. The exhaust has had a bit of an update in line with AMA and FIM regulations, so it's a little bit quieter than before. I don't think this bike's got fuel in it just yet, so I can't start it for the first time, but we'll find out at the launch whether it lives up to that. And the other talking point here is Yamaha's Power Tuner app. It has been industry standard for quite some time now, and for 2026 it actually undergoes a little bit more change, including a new feature where you can lock the bike to any unintended users. So it's a really good theft deterrent. You can basically set a lock function in the app, meaning that would-be thieves now have one more barrier to overcome if they're thinking about pinching your bike. But as always, lots of different tunability with this bike's power maps. You can really tailor it to yourself. I've had a little bit of time on these bikes outside of the launch rotation, and I still haven't dug into all the features with the Power Tuner app. It's really clever. So that is a very quick look at the 2026 Yamaha YZ450F. Really excited to ride this bike for the first time. As I said, sometime in September. Keep an eye out on the channel for that, because we'll have all the latest details on that. And importantly, I want to see whether it lives up to what Yamaha is billing as a more rideable bike. I guess on first inspection, they've done a lot of work with this bike. It was already at the pointy end of its class. Let's see if they can make it even better.